You'll be on in 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this town hall. Wow, what a day it's been already for small businesses. There's been so much happening, and I know we're all eager to get as much information as we can, and that's what this webinar is all about today. We have a great group of experts for you. We're just going to give a few more minutes for people to get registered. They're signing in right now. We have over 150 people coming, so we're really excited to have everyone here. Yeah, so just sit tight about 2 or 3 more minutes and we'll get started with everyone. Thanks so much. All right, how's everyone doing? Hope everyone's doing well. Can you hear me? Oh wait, we're gonna wait 1 second. Clay's getting some relevant information. You're okay? 5 minutes? Oh, 4, 3, 4, 2, 1. Oh, there we go. Hi, everyone. Excellent. So we're very excited that you're all here today. We have an amazing group of people here this morning to help, this afternoon, I guess, to help with small businesses. We navigate announcement after announcement as we try to figure out how we can all get through this time together. Thank you so much for everyone being here. You'll notice that you do have a live event Q&A option. We're going to try to get to those questions as many as possible. How today is going to work is we have 3 panelists. They're each going to give about 10-15 minutes each to sort of give you the latest information that small businesses need to know. And then I'll moderate some questions afterwards after each session. So we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. Yeah, my name is Mike Morrison. I'm here in Calgary, Alberta. I am also a small business, and Aiken Henderson is my accountant. And I'm sure, like all of you, have been calling all your accountants and small business managers, just trying to figure out what's happening. So I'm really appreciative to Clayton and Ronnie and the whole Aiken Henderson team, George, and all of them to help small businesses. So let's just get this thing started right away. I know Clayton's basically had to change his presentation in the last 45 minutes with all the announcements. So I'm really excited to bring Clayton here. He's the partner at Aiken Henderson, and they focus on the success and the taxation of Canadian private companies. And I mean, they've just been so helpful for me. So I'll hand this over to Clayton. And like I said, put your questions in the feed and we'll get to as many as we can afterwards. Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks so much, Mike. Wow, what a moving target this morning. I'm sure a lot of you are the heads are sort of spinning in terms of all the information that's come out, and maybe the lack of details about the information that's come out. So we'll get right into it, and I'll work through the programs from the government that are available right now. So let's just dive right in. So let me just get to my slide. Okay, so just for a resource for everybody on the call, I'm actively putting together a blog that I'm trying to consolidate all of the information and all of the links for all of the resources that are available to you. I've tried to update it for this morning's announcements, and so there's the link. Okay, so when we talk about government assistance and what other governments are doing and what our government is doing, I like to bucket it into sort of three broad categories. Businesses right now need cash, and cash is, the number one thing that they need to stay afloat is cash. Another type of benefit that's being delivered right now is access to capital, and then the last benefit that's being delivered is deferrals. And so I'm hoping that I'm hoping that some of the announcements that were made today are going to come through how I hope they're going to come through. So the first one is cash for business. You see I've just put a whole bunch of lines through it because I got a whole bunch of question marks. The 10% wage subsidy, I don't know if that's still on the table or not, or if it's been replaced. Certainly some of the language used this morning by the government suggests that it's going to be replaced. Or is it going to be the new 75% wage subsidy going to be in addition to? There's a lot of questions there. But broadly speaking, this was available to NPOs, charities, Canadian-controlled private corps with taxable capital under $15 million. And you had to have, this is an interesting one for the wage subsidy, you had to have used or claimed some small business limit last year in the legislation that was released on Wednesday. And so this is particularly relevant. We had a client, who immediately this triggered me to call them because we're about to pull the trigger on their 2019 tax returns. And in their corporate group, they've got 4 or 5 companies that pay salaries and can take advantage of a wage subsidy, whether it's at 10% or 75%, I'm not sure. But we pushed all the small business limit into one company. And so we had to quickly go back and change that and throw $1 onto everybody's, every wage paying company's tax returns. So the good news too with this one is that the payroll providers had caught up. So if you're on an automated accounting platform like we offer at Aitken Henderson, employers would simply have to call us up, we'll toggle the switch, and the calculations will be dealt with in the back end. Again, big changes coming for the 75%. So what do we know about the 75%? So I'm quoting words from this morning's statement from the Prime Minister. So we're bringing in a 10% wage subsidy, we're bringing it up to 75%. So that sort of indicates that the 10% is being replaced by the 75%. This will be for qualifying businesses. Well, we don't know what that means. Employers have had to, and it's for employers who have had to slow down or stop operations because of COVID-19. Okay, so maybe that doesn't mirror the 10% wage subsidy now because there was no condition that employers had to slow down or stop operations because of COVID-19 to access the 10% wage subsidy. So I don't know, that's potentially conflicting information, I'm not sure. This will be backdated to Sunday, March 15th, great news. And we do know that it's too big to access this program entirely through a reduction in payroll withholding. So there's going to have to be some other delivery method to get this cash out to employers. And then another thing that he said is, our hope is that employers who are being pushed to lay off people because of COVID-19, excuse the typo, I literally just put this together in the last, half an hour, 45 minutes as this was all happening. We're hoping that they'll think again, he says. And for those who have already laid off workers, we hope you will consider rehiring them, given this payroll support. So more to come very soon. So this is really interesting to me because it indicates that the 10% wage subsidy is being replaced. However, it indicates that there might be an additional requirement that you have to stop or slow down operations to access it. If you look at what's happening in Denmark, you have to be laying people off to access this subsidy. And so, if you're Aitken Henderson and you're doing tax returns and you're still sort of chugging along or trying to, maybe you don't have access to this. Well, we would have had access to the 10% wage subsidy. So do we now not have access to that? I'm not sure. The other thing that's interesting for European countries that are instituting this is, if you look at the difference between Denmark and Germany, Germany is sharing wages with employees for work. that indicates that they're still working. Whereas in Denmark, if you're still working, you're not eligible for the wage subsidy. So they're paying people to stay home. And so we don't know what our government's program is going to be like for that as well. And maybe Wendy will be able to get into that a bit later on. So another cash for business, I consider the 76, the extension of the Canada Work Sharing Program to be a cash for business, even though maybe it's not quite a cash for business, but it does put dollars into the pockets of your employees while still calling them employees. And so Wendy will get into the details about that a bit later. And another cash for business subsidy is that after the big deferral for WCB for private companies in Alberta, 50%, when that amount comes due next year, 50% will be subsidized. So that's another cash for business. On to cash for individuals. Well, there's the employment insurance program, which Wendy will talk about later. There's a plan to increase the child tax benefits in May 2019, $300 a child. I had originally thought, maybe we were having a rush to get through some 2019 personal tax returns. Not the case. This is calculated based on your 2018 income, and it'll happen automatically. Same thing with the GST credit. You're going to get a bumped up GST credit in May, and this is for, there's income thresholds on this, and so you want to just be aware of that as well. Okay, so the Canada Emergency Response Benefit. So this is really for people who aren't able to work anymore for a variety of reasons, and they don't have access to EI. And we'll let Wendy get into the real details of this, but a couple interesting parts that stood out is there seems to be a threshold for workers, which are defined as people who are at least 15 years old. So that's interesting. You had to have made $12,000 up to the application in the 12-month period up to the application, or during 2019. And there's some other interesting criteria as well there that we'll let Wendy get into. Alberta is offering emergency isolation support. So if you're required to self-isolate, or you're caring for someone who has to self-isolate and you got no other pay or compensation, you can apply for this. And of course, if you're in real dire straits, there's the emergency financial assistance, which you can apply to have certain top-ups for things like food, childcare, transportation from the Alberta government. Okay, so now the next one is access to capital. And the reason I separate them out this way is because when you're looking at the access to capital or the deferrals, in most cases, you're going to have to, in all cases, you're going to have to pay for that one day. And so, it's not a cash benefit to the company, although, cash paid later is better than cash paid now, especially right now. But you just want to be careful with all these things, because if you take advantage of all the deferrals and whatnot, you want to consider, hey, are you going to have a big bill coming up for this at the end of the whatever deferral term you're allowed? You want to make sure you're thinking about that and building that into your cash flow forecasts. So they announced this morning the Canada Emergency Business Account. Same thing, no details other than what the Prime Minister said on TV. And so what he said is the banks will soon, so we don't know what soon means, offer 40K loans. And they'll be guaranteed, they'll be government backed and delivered through your financial institutions. So I'm assuming that means all the banks are going to be able to access this. And it will be for qualifying businesses. So what does that mean? Again, we don't know what that means. Great news though, it'll be interest free for up to 1 year. And potentially, I guess this should have been in cash benefits. You might have a 10K forgiveness on that if you meet certain criteria. And so watch for the definition of what a qualifying business is as this comes out over the weekend or next week. And if you're if you're a qualifying business, get your application in for this thing immediately. Like this is a juicy deal. If you qualify, it looks really nice, particularly with the 1 year interest deferral. It gives you some time to smooth out the repayment of that without interest. We don't know what the terms of this look like, and we just know that the details are going to be on the way very soon. So that's an interesting one that was announced today, and I think that'll help a lot of small businesses. And there was another drop in the Bank of Canada rate today. As of the last conversation I had about this, which was yesterday, we haven't seen any of the commercial lenders follow suit yet. If you're seeing that happen at your bank, that's awesome. But we're not sure when that's going to trickle through the system. We had a session on Wednesday, and the answer we got was, supply and demand. And right now, the banks are running off their feet trying to keep up with loan applications. So interesting. So 10 billion of additional support administered through BDC and EDC, and I think another 12 billion was announced today. Although I'm not sure if it's directly related to these programs, details needed. But the BDC has on their website that they're doing small business loans up to $100,000, working capital loans up to $2 million, purchase order financing. I can tell you that getting through to the BDC right now is tough unless you have an account rep with them. Please give your account rep a call and see if you can get through, but they're absolutely inundated with applications right now, understandably, which might be the reason for the 40K loan announcement that was made this morning. Alberta has also announced that ATB and some credit union customers will have access to additional working capital financing. So I guess the moral of the story is just call your banks and see what's available. The 40K loan that's coming from the government, maybe hold off on that for a day or two just to let the details come out so we don't clog up the systems with questions about things we don't know about just yet. So Export Development Canada is, they're guaranteeing bank loans up to 5 million. So if you qualify to work with them, that might be a consideration for you as well. On to deferrals. So all income tax payments that are due between March 18th and August 31st are deferred till September 1st. Note this includes Part 1 tax. Okay, so, Part 4 tax, Part 13 tax, GST, there's an announcement this morning, but it's not extended to September 1st. This is income tax. So your personal income tax, your corporate income tax has been deferred till September 1. What does that mean? Well, that means on September 1, your taxes are going to hit and you will very likely have an additional and installment requirements will all hit sort of at the same time in September. And, so there might be a big bill coming in September if you take advantage of this one. But, again, September's better than now, I suppose, in a lot of cases, in most cases. So this morning was announced that GST and duties on taxes on imports will be delayed until June. I don't know which day in June, details on the way. So if you have a March 31st GST bill coming due for your December 31st year end, you won't need to pay that until June. There's nothing about a filing extension that I've seen for GST just yet. So I think you still got to get the GST return in, but the payment won't actually be due till June. And the personal tax filing deadline, of course, has been extended till June, as has the T3 trust deadline. CPA got a letter from CRA. CPA Canada got a letter from CRA yesterday, and the CPA has posted on their website in the members area that T2s are being extended, that were due March 31st to May 31st, are being extended to June 1st. So if you've got a December 31st, a September 31st, or September 30th year end, and your T2 would have been due on March 31st, now you can hold off until filing until June 1. Whether or not that's a good idea, that's a question, that's a different question. The March 31st partnership T5013 deadline has been extended to May 1st. So that's big relief. We were struggling to get through a few partnership returns here for the deadline, and the NR4 non-resident tax withholding forms have been extended to May 1 as well as 1134s. 1134s, I guess, would be extended to June 1. Individual, so more deferrals. There's a 25% reduction in the minimum RIF withdrawal, and charities and charity tax returns. Anything due between now and the end of the year is going to be due at the end of the year. So if you've got we've got a September 30th charity that has a return due on March 31st. I just printed it off and have it sitting on my desk here. I'm still going to mail it, but it isn't actually due for until the end of the year. Okay, so this is big for individuals. So if you've got a personal mortgage, call your bank if you need to renegotiate. The CMHC has given lenders tools to defer payments, reamortize loans, capitalize outstanding interest, and you can defer your mortgage potentially for up to 6 months, interest and principal. But again, you come back to what if that bill all hit at the end of 6 months? That'd be terrible. That'd be a huge bill. So what they're doing is they're amortizing it through the remaining life of your mortgage, or you might look at recapitalizing or reamortizing loans. Alberta and federal government announced a 6-month automatic moratorium on student loan repayments. No interest will accrue during this time. I don't know if the loan term gets extended or if the payments go up for the rest of the loan period. I couldn't find those details. And similar to the Alberta announcement that you could call your utility company residential, farm, and small commercial utility payments for up to 90 days deferral. And there's no indication if a giant bill hits at 90 days or if that's going to be spread out for you as well. I don't know those answers. So just think about that as you're taking advantage of these deferrals. ATB personal and business banking customers can also apply to have their mortgages and loans and lines of credits deferred for up to 6 months. Again, talk to ATB about, what does that look like at 6 months? Am I going to have a big bill, or are we going to smooth that out? And then the collection, so there's some property tax changes for the province as well. And then this one that is a cash benefit is also a deferral. So WCP payments, if you've paid in for 2020, you're supposed to be getting an automatic refund of those. And then it will become due in 2021. And when it becomes due, 50% will be waived. So, this is a deferral and a cash benefit on the WCB payments. Some CRA procedural stuff. They're now accepting electronic signatures for personal taxes, which is awesome for firms like ours who are working diligently from home to make sure everybody's taxes get filed on time. Now we don't have to meet you in person or do a fax thing to get your signature. We can do it through certified electronic software. The collection center is closed. So we actually ran into this with a customer, a client of ours who has a payment arrangement going with the government, and it's like, we need to renegotiate this payment arrangement because my income just went to zero. And so the website says, yes, we understand that some of you might be in that situation. And so call us at this other number, because our normal collection, the normal number you're going to call is not working. So call this other number, and we'll do what we can to ensure that there's no financial hardship, or is the wording that's used on the CRA's website. The CRA will not take any collection action on new tax debts. Note that this doesn't apply to existing collection actions. Penalties and interest relief may be available due to COVID-19. You still need to file for taxpayer relief on that. And there's no post-assessment reviews or income tax audits going to be triggered for 4 weeks after March 18th. Most objections are being held in abeyance until further notice, including related collection actions, but they've said on the website that we'll continue to work on objections where the taxpayers are entitled to benefits or credits. So yeah, big news this morning. In terms of the 75% wage subsidy, I'm pretty excited about that, and I'm pretty excited about the 40K loan. The devil's in the details on these things, and we really need to see what's coming up in those details in terms of loan terms, et cetera, and how the 75% is going to work, if it's going to work in tandem with the 10%, who's going to qualify, et cetera. Those are all big questions that I have sort of outstanding right now. So, Mike.
Excellent. Hi, Clay. Thank you so much. So we got some questions here from some people. You may have answered some of them, but just want to make sure. I think a question a lot of people have is these announcements announced today. What does it mean for the steps that some employees and employers will have taken in the last few weeks? So if you've laid someone off and they're already applying for EI, what is the process now if they're going to now do the wage subsidy instead, kind of thing? We don't have information on that right now, right?
Yeah, that's right. We need to see the law to be able to properly talk about that. And frankly, that's not really my area of expertise. That's where I might ask Wendy to pop in.
Yeah.
Okay.
So do you want me to? I can just speak to that as much as I know. I think if that's the case, what an employer would have to do is basically same thing as if you were, regardless of the situation with COVID, in a normal situation, you wanted to bring someone back, you bring them back on payroll, and they start receiving income on your payroll. So when they go, when EI gets back to them, or they have to answer the question, are you receiving income? That's when they would have to cancel their claim. It's going to be interesting because there's going to be a lot of people in application and then trying to cancel. I don't think the system can handle that. I think it would have to be the first go around on, do you have earnings? But as soon as the employer puts them back on payroll, they're back on payroll and they no longer will obviously qualify for that EI.
Okay, great. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you for that. And we'll get some more questions for you, I'm sure. There is a shareholder question here for you, Clay. 1 second, I want to make sure I read it right. Oh yeah, as Roxanne asks, as a shareholder employee, are you eligible for the wage subsidy? Do you know that?
So, you know, I was certainly eligible for the 10% wage subsidy. What the 75% is going to look like. So the 10% wage subsidy it didn't specify that, you know, that it couldn't go to an owner manager. You know, there's still, so there's that, and it didn't specify that there had to be, you know, some shutdown at your company, like the words that were used for the 75%. So, you know, I don't know yet. We need the details on the 75% wage subsidy before I can answer that, frankly.
It sort of feels like maybe, as much as we all want answers right away, like maybe with the announcements today, it's Friday afternoon now, we might have to wait a few days till we know what actions we need to take immediately. Do you sort of agree with that? Like,
yeah, absolutely, I agree with that. Yeah. But I mean, keep asking them. We can try. You know, yeah.
Okay, there's a few more questions here, and then we'll get. There's a lot of questions here. What we'll do is we'll publish them too, Clayton, and maybe you can answer them while Wendy's giving her presentation, if that's okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
So if you're late in filing your tax returns, will you still be eligible for the CERB, Canadian Emergency Relief Benefit?
Yeah, I didn't see any requirement in the CERB legislation that said you had to file your tax returns. So I think you're going to be okay for that.
Okay. As a small business owner, I've been paying myself through dividend model with 75% wage subsidy. Are we better off moving dividend to salary to gain from the benefit?
That's interesting. So a couple points there. For the 10% wage subsidy, you had to be registered for a payroll account at the date of the announcement. And so if you've always paid dividends and you've never registered for a payroll account, then you wouldn't be able to take advantage of that. And so, but you know, certainly it's a wage subsidy, it's not a dividend subsidy. And so if you've seen a drop in your income, you might be eligible for the CERB if you're on dividends. And so you have to do that math and see which one's better for you, I think.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so we just want to be sensitive to time, so we'll move on to Wendy. But Clayton, there's some questions in there, and
I'll take a peek at them.
See what you can do. Okay, up next, Wendy, we already got a sneak peek of. Hi, Wendy. Hi. Wendy Dufries, the president and principal consultant of Wendy Ellen Inc., a local human resources consulting firm working with small to mid-sized businesses of all industries. And by local, we mean Calgary, because people watching all over. She has 30 years of practical HR experience, is the co-author of a book, The Only HR Best Practice You'll Ever Need. A grassroots and practical approach to what leaders and HR teams often overcomplicated dealing with their people. So, Wendy, how have you been doing?
Well, we've been a little crazy. Of course, we've been busy with our current clients and clients that we've never worked with before. So just trying to maneuver the programs, the layoffs. So yeah, we've been a little bit crazy, but unfortunately, it's not our favorite work. So. But we'll be back to that in the short term, I'm hoping.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll let you give your presentation.
Okay.
And as always,
Perfect.
People ask for questions, and we'll do our best to get through as many of them as we can.
So thank you very much. Welcome, everybody, this afternoon. Thanks for tuning in. I have to preface this similar to what Clay said. This is what I know of today. I was changing my slide this morning as well with the wage subsidy change. So this is what I know today. The other piece too, even with some of the things, particularly around temporary layoffs, there's some varying legal opinions out there on when you can use them, when you can't. We use a firm, so we go with their advice and get daily updates on these types of programs and information. So this is what I know today, and feel free for questions, of course. So first slide, this is basic stuff. Work from home if possible, video conference when possible. Don't attend work at all if you're showing any signs of illness, or obviously this is now in force, return from travel. Employees that actually are in a workplace where there are sick people have the right to say they're not coming to work because of that. So you have to maintain a healthy workplace, and right now that is, if anybody is showing any signs of illness, they need to go home. Call 811 for direction on health-related concerns, social distance, practice good hygiene, and wipe your surfaces, door handles, or use your sleeve, whatever it takes when you're in an office to maintain good practices. So the first is, and this seems like old news now actually, but the provincial government introduced 14-day job protected leave. They called it paid leave. Basically, most people are turning to EI sickness benefits for that, which I will talk to on the next slide or two. This is a leave for anybody that's required to self-isolate for any reason, illness or waiting testing results, or also caring for a child or dependent adult that is also required to self-isolate. You don't need a medical note for that. And previously for EI, you had to be employed with the employer for 90 days. That is no longer the case under this leave. It offers 14-day self-isolation periods coverage, and actually the isolation period from onset of symptoms, I believe, has actually been reduced now to 10 days as long as your symptoms have resolved themselves. That particular leave did not apply to self-employed individuals or contractors because it's based on the EI system. There's another Alberta program that was a temporary program for working adults that are not eligible for EI, and this was supposed to be the bridge between what's now the new Canada Emergency Response Benefit. Was a one-time relief benefit of $11.46 for people that aren't eligible for EI, which that had the same criteria as the job protected leave. And there's a link there to where the application for that support is. So EI sickness benefits. This is nothing new. EI has always had sickness benefits. What is new under the COVID is if your illness, well, actually anybody that goes on EI sickness benefits now, I don't think they can determine they will be waiving the 1 week non-payment period. So you will be eligible for benefits right away. So this is obviously a federal employment insurance program, and it's a leave due to illness. So when somebody is a payroll administrator is putting someone on leave, they tick the box illness. It allows up to 15 weeks assistance for medical reasons. And as I said, during the COVID, for the COVID related illnesses, the 1 week waiting period has been waived. There's been a lot of questions around, can an employer force employees to take vacation pay, bank time? What can an employer enforce? So as an employee, you also may consider using other available leaves when you have to be off work, self-isolating. That's your choice. It's higher pay, obviously, than EI. So you can request to use your vacation pay or your banked overtime. But as per legislation, employers are not always required to grant that request. Provincial employment rules only provide or require that employees provide vacation pay, and they only have to let them take that vacation within a year of it being earned. So they're not obligated to let employees basically borrow on their vacation. Employers also may request employees take vacation leave and use their vacation pay. And that is definitely in Section 38 of the Alberta Employment Standards Act. In that case, if the employer was doing that, you would have to give 2 weeks notice. The other piece around bank time, it is a policy, a company policy. You can change how and when you pay that out as well. I'm not seeing many clients use this. Most of them are using the various EI programs that are available. So the next one I want to talk about, which is this piece of the slide is right out of the Alberta Employment Standards Kit, which talks about temporary layoff. This is what the majority of my clients have been using, is the temporary layoff. So it allows for an employer to lay people off for up to 59 days. On day 60, you have to decide whether you're going to bring them back or pay them out their due notice. There's a lot of technicalities around this type of leave. There's a lot of technicalities in the letter that you have to provide that employee when they're going on a temporary leave. Part of that is they actually have to include Section 62, 63, and 64 of the code in their layoff letter. I'll talk a little bit more. This is just actually the legislation, and what it's saying is that anybody that's worked for you under a year, you only have to give 1 week notice on this leave. Anybody that's been working for you over 2 years, 2 years or over, you need to give 2 weeks notice. So a temporary layoff versus termination of employment, which is, a lot of people still call that a layoff. If you're not planning on bringing them back, you're terminating their employment. But a temporary layoff should be used if you plan on bringing the employees back. It really benefits employers that have longer term employees because it reduces the notice period. If you have somebody that's in normal termination would be owed 4 or 5 weeks notice, under a temporary layoff, you only need to give them the 2 weeks notice at the time of the layoff. The remaining notice is paid if you don't bring them back. And it's not only the employment standards notice, but there's also common law comes into play then too, sort of what's been awarded in the past from the courts. This leave can be extended up to 120 days if you maintain some sort of employment relationship. The legal term is consideration for indeterminate layoff period, which, for example, you can continue employee benefits during that time, or you can give some wages during that time. Temporary layoff is really a good message to your employees. It's telling them that this is temporary and you plan on bringing them back. Termination of employment, I've put the notice period down in the bottom corner of the slide. So that's the Alberta Employment Standards notice only. It's not common law on top of that. So if you actually terminate employment, full notice along with any other money owing must be paid at the time of termination. And of course, common law practice does still come into effect. By terminating people on a permanent basis, it also does give you the flexibility during this time to reorganize, sort of call back people that are needed in your organization as your business picks up again. And it also then, upon rehire, it does give you the ability then to look at your compensation. Is it going to meet the needs of what you can afford as your business starts to pick up again? I've had a lot of companies ask, well, we can't afford to pay notice, we can't afford to pay common law. Unfortunately, the legislation's the legislation. So, and is an actual fact, as if we think back to a number of years ago now, when the markets took a big drop, then courts were actually awarding larger notice periods and severance dollars because it also takes longer for an employee to find work. So you have to, the fact that you don't have the money to pay the notice is not going to be an excuse not to pay the notice. Supplemental Unemployment Benefit Program, known as a SUB program. This also is not new, but it can be used during temporary work stoppage. So this program allows the employer to top up EI benefits. So basically you've got EI program subsidizing 55%, let's just say, if everybody's of your wages, and then you top up to a maximum of 95% of normal wages. So it does give you a bit of a relief there with the new wage subsidy benefit that offers a lot more subsidy than the supplemental unemployment benefit would. The key with the sub-plan benefit is you had to have registered the program before you start the program, and there's quite a lengthy, I've put the link to the bottom where you would apply for that program. It's a lengthy application, but that has to be approved before you can put this program in place. And the subsidy, the sub-plan has to be paid 100% by the employer, and it has to be paid periodically. It can't be paid in one lump sum. Reducing compensation, that's also another thing that employers are doing. There's always a risk of constructive dismissal claims when you reduce compensation, always. So you really do need to give the appropriate notice, just as similar as if you were terminating an employee when you reduce compensation. Generally speaking, somewhere around a 15% reduction in earnings typically does not trigger employees to file constructive dismissal. And I'm saying typically, that's sort of what the legal speak about that is, around what triggers constructive dismissal. most employees think that a 15% reduction is better than no employment at all. And obviously, most of what I'm talking about today applies to non-unionized employees. In a union environment, you have no choice, but you must go by the union agreement. So wage subsidy. So this is more what Clay has already talked about, but obviously it's a layoff prevention type of a program. They did announce this morning that the 10% is now 75% of remuneration for 3 months. They had an old maximum in the 10%, which I'm assuming they'll have to increase that because it will basically erode the validity of this program, because $13.75 per employee would be eaten up very quickly at a 75% wage subsidy. And like Clay said, the old program, the 10%, they were going to you were able to keep that cash in pocket by reducing the amount of income tax you remitted to the government. This is the 75% is going to be too big for that, so we have no idea yet how they're going to claim that. Although under the 10% program, there was a way to apply for it, and it would come back to you in a lump sum. So assuming it's going to be something like that. The payroll providers, some of them that we use, some of the bigger ones, they still don't have the details how they would do that on the payroll system on their end. So we're still trying to get detailed information on that as well. Workshare program is another program that's being used quite a bit. This is where you basically have employees sharing the workload. Their hours are reduced, and that's topped up by EI. So eligibility on an employer, it's all there. It's if you've had a decline in business activity by at least 10%, directly or indirectly related to COVID. Like I said, this is not a new program either, but a lot more people are taking advantage of it during this time. You've had to be in business for 2 years. It does apply to private, public, or nonprofit businesses, and you have to have at least 2 employees in the Workshare program, hence Workshare. And you have to be willing to implement a recovery plan to support the ongoing business operations, and that is part of the application. Eligibility for employees is they have to be permanent, full, part-time staff. So basically your core staff, and they have to be eligible to receive EI benefits in order to get the EI top-up, and they have to agree to reduce their normal hours by the same percentages as their coworker and be available to share that work. A little bit more detail. So basically you look at people in the same job type that are doing the same work. So everybody in that group has to agree to reduce their hours by the same percentage and share in the available work. If the work increases, the increase must be shared equally. Your hours need to be reduced by 10% to a max of 60%, which is roughly 3 days. And this can vary week to week. This program is fairly administrative to manage, just a warning out there. Theoretically, your reduction in your work hours should correspond approximately with the number of attempted temporary layoffs you would have to make if you didn't have this program in place. The program originally was 6 consecutive weeks to 26 weeks, and in our normal situation, you are allowed to extend that by additional 12 weeks, but under the special COVID-19 circumstances, you can now extend that to a maximum of 76 weeks. And one thing to remember, everybody participating in this must sign the agreement. And once again, I've put the link on the slide to the appropriate application. Clay talked about the WCB Relief Premium, so I won't go into detail on that one. So the new Canada Emergency Response Benefit, the CERB as it's called. So it's $2,000 per month for up to 4 months for workers, including self-employed. So this is the relief for those who are not eligible for EI benefits. April 6th is the date I've heard tossed around where it will be available through the CRA portal. And this is for workers who lose income due to COVID, those who don't qualify for EI, or those who haven't been able to access EI. It's for those sick or quarantined with COVID, taking care of a family member, parents with children who, due to closures of schools or daycares, have to stay home. Loss of work, still employed, although not working due to the COVID interruption. And like I said, they're hoping to have access early April. I haven't seen any details on that yet. And they're saying that you should begin to receive your CERB payments 10 days or so after the application. There has been a fair bit of questioning around that because the EI system is basically collapsed a little bit at the beginning, but they said they are building the system to handle the volumes. Who and how can collect this? So those who are currently in receipt of employment insurance benefits, whether it's the regular or sickness, need to continue to receive EI and should not apply for this benefit. If your EI application is in process, please don't apply for this benefit. If your EI benefit ceases before October 3rd, 2020, you should be able to apply for this benefit once your EI benefit ceases and you're still not returning to work or still do not have work due to COVID-19. The other thing is if you collect the CERB benefit and it expires after the 4 months and you're still unemployed, if you're eligible for EI benefits, you should still have access to those EI benefits at that time. So, there's going to be some people that are collecting EI benefits that is less than $2,000 a month, which in a way is unfortunate because this benefit would have been a bit higher than what some people would be collecting on EI. Although if you're collecting full EI, that benefit is higher than the $2,000 a month. This is just an HR feel-good thing. If you text COVID-19 HOPE to 393939, you subscribe to this system, and every day there you get a message of hope, a message of inspiration. I have done that, and it's just nice to see with all the bad news out there that it's just nice to see in the morning something good.
Wendy, thank you so much for all that amazing information. I'm just going to there's a lot of questions here. I want to get to them. Wendy, if we need or want to move an employee from full-time to part-time under a new agreement, are we basically terminating and then rehiring, or can they qualify for EI without an ROE? I'd like to avoid paying out vacation as we hope to move employee back to at full-time ASAP.
So I got to walk through this. So if someone is going full to part-time, it is definitely a change of contract. So you are terminating one contract, entering into another. So definitely you would have to pay notice on that. You don't have to pay out vacation. You could make that as part of the contract that you would continue with their vacation. But in that case, they're not going to be eligible for the EI if you actually change them to part-time.
Okay. All right. Do family members employed in the family small business who are not eligible for EI qualify for any of these emergency benefits or programs?
So my understanding of the CERB is that if you showed $5,000 earnings in the previous year, you should be eligible for that benefit. They did say it was going to be a simple 2 to 3 question application. So that should be what that benefit is for, because those people will not qualify for EI.
Okay, yeah, that's what I think too. It feels like almost everyone is covered in some form. Would you sort of agree with that?
I agree. There's obviously going to be some loopholes. There obviously is. But that's my impression is they are trying to get aid and money out to every type of worker in the country in one way or another.
Okay, we'll just get to we'll get to 2 questions and then we'll move on. So how do people choose to apply for EI? Oh, it just disappeared on me. I think Clay may have answered. It just disappeared. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna change. Oh wait. Oh, there it is. I'm sorry. I see. How do people choose to apply for EI or CERB? My employees would better benefit from EI payments at $573 weekly.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I said. There's going to be people on either side of that $2,000 mark, right? So I would suggest they apply for EI if they're going to get a higher benefit. The difference, EI right now, last I talked to somebody that got through, it's about a 30-day wait for money. So that's the problem with EI. So whereas, but if you look the CERB, the portal's going to be ready early April. They're hoping the first week. And then they said money flowing 10 to 14 days after that. So you're at this point right now, you're almost in the exact same time frame for dollars to hit your bank account.
Okay. Okay. Last.
So I'd go with a higher benefit is what I would do.
Yeah. Okay. I like this question. If you have 2 part-time jobs to get full-time hours and you get laid off from one, can you collect EI benefit because of the loss of income? So now
that's a really good question.
Yeah.
I think the answer to that question is yes. But I think what happens then is whenever you're collecting EI, you always have to, every time, I think it's every 2 weeks, you have to declare any earnings you've made. So that's going to be no different. If they lost the part-time job, it depends on how much money they're earning on their other part-time job, because believe the EI simply deducts those earnings dollar for dollar. Okay. And that's never changed. Like, you still always had to report. I think you can earn something up to 25% of the benefit without it affecting the benefit, but anything over that, I believe, is just deducted dollar for dollar. That's a really good question.
That's a tricky one, yeah. So if people want to email you or contact you with questions, what's the best way of getting hold of you, Wendy?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't put that on there. It's Wendy at WendyEllenInc.ca, which is my company. Yeah.
Okay, great. And it's Ellen. Yeah. Okay,
that's
great.
Correct.
Okay, thank you so much, Wendy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Up next, Marty Park, and you can tell Marty is no stranger to webinars and podcasts. He's got that fancy microphone and headphones. He's the president and business mastermind and magic bean planter at Evolve Business Group, Inc., and best-selling author of The Tiger by the Tail, 99 Secrets to Tame and Master Your Business. So obviously business owners are, everything has been shaken. Every foundation of business has been shaken. How has it been looking from your perspective, Marty? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute, Marty.
How's that?
There we go.
There we go. I've been dealing with clients all across the board, some where they've closed the business, ranging all the way to some clients who have said, everything's running just fine for us. Our industry's been sort of protected. So it's across the board, but I would say, while most of our clients have been pretty calm, there's an underlying nervousness, right? You don't know what's coming up and how do you manage that into the future. And so I want to address some of those things today.
Okay, well, I'll hand it over to you. Thanks, Marty.
Thank you. So unlike you'll notice with my slide presentation, there's going to be a little less stats, but I want to talk a little bit about communication in the headspace for a business owner and what we need to be doing in a time where it's so turbulent. And the first thing I want to be able to touch on is the idea that there we go. That this is, I think, the way entrepreneurship feels a lot of the time. And certainly in the last 2 or 3 weeks, even if you've had a lot of stability in your business before that, there's so much changing so rapidly, as you can see even by my counterparts, there's so much to manage that one of the things I got to stress at this point is if you're trying to figure out all these different programs on your own, you have to reach out, whether it's to Clay or your accountant or to Wendy or somebody else you know in HR, that you need expert help. Even with the BDC, talking to people I know there, the announcement came out and internally they were getting details of things 10 days later. So to be able to mitigate and manage those waters is tough. But my hope is today to move from this state of sort of panic and concern to a little bit more like the Tony Robbins, where I think one of the roles every business owner has to step up to is the idea that you have to have a message and you have to be bringing it out to people. And the last thing you want to be doing is getting quiet. And so specifically what I want to talk about is what your first responsibility as a business owner is going to be to connect with people. The first people I want you to think about connecting with, even if you have laid them off already, is your team. There's nothing worse as people feel isolated and things get quiet. The story that people start to play out in their head of, am I going to get laid off tomorrow? What's happening? It's one of those things that I've said to people, if you have a bi-weekly meeting, you need to be having a quick huddle with your team every couple of days and letting them know, not necessarily misleading them, but letting them know, hey, this is what we're doing. And as Wendy said, if there is this situation where there's layoffs, being very clear that this is temporary. I think one of the most important things is customers. The reason you want to reach out to customers is because for most customers, and we know this other than the traditional model where people have been sending out the formal notice of this is how my business is handling things, customers are not getting any connection or feedback or communication with most of their suppliers. And so here's an opportunity to be able to maintain that relationship, but you have to give them an idea. One of the best ones I saw this week was a print shop here that actually said, we're open for business and we're here to help. And although that came by email, and I'll address email in a sec, I thought it's the first time I've seen somebody actively say, we're open for business. And your customers need to know that, because in this state, we don't know what businesses are running, which ones aren't, who's delivering. I'm disconnected from that, and it's your responsibility as the owner with your team to be reaching out to customers. The same thing with suppliers, letting them know that you're still buying, finding out what their status is. I have a client who's just found out from their overseas supplier they may have to shut down their plant. I believe it's in Vietnam. That's going to affect $70,000 to $80,000 worth of orders and POs. And so he's saying, well, what do I do? How do I mitigate that? The only reason he found that out was by proactively reaching out to his suppliers. When I reach out to people, I don't want to look like this guy. I'm not trying to proactively sell something. I'm not trying to hustle up a new order. What I'm really trying to do is make connection and let people know that I care. And I can't stress that enough, that the really mandate that you're going to, I've said these two words, connection and care from you today is going to be your brand equity into the future. This is the thing that people are going to remember at your business, the time taken to be able to reach out. And I've got to stress that by whether it's Zoom, FaceTime, Skype, any of this, Microsoft Teams, or whether it's phone, you have to reach out to people where you can see them, where you can hear their voice, where you can make a human connection. If you're like me, you've received probably 40, 50, 60 of these corporate emails that say, here's how we're handling the COVID outbreak. That's a great corporate message, but makes no connection for me with the people at that business. And in fact, after the first few of them, I just delete them now. So they almost have a negative effect. So reach out to people and get your team reaching out to all of your accounts and just check in with them. Asking the question, how are you? How are you personally? How are things at your business? People have a need at this time to be able to talk. And if you are making the effort to reach out and do that, you're building connection, and that's going to help your business long term. Ironically, I have a couple of clients who've been reaching out to clients, and almost at the end of the conversation, they say, hey, can we order some more stuff? Sales do come about from that, but you never lead with that idea of selling. And then the last question I ask is, how can we help? I had a great supplier of mine ask about helping. I said, I didn't know, but as we talked, I said, I really wanted to launch a new marketing program, but I was worried about bringing on the full value of it or the cost of it. And he, as I described it to him, he said, is there any way we could partner on that? Because I'd like to do a similar program. And suddenly by splitting the cost, we're both able to launch it now. But it came from this discussion of how can you help? I think one of the classic things as entrepreneurs is we say, well, I don't really have time. Well, you do now. So if you've got the time, there's nothing better. I know a financial advisor who said, I never have time to reach out to 600 clients. And he's working through that list. He's having better conversations with his client base now than he has in the last 10 years, stating that that's an opportunity to be able to reach those people. And really what I want to be able to do is say, your job as a business owner to all of these groups is being a voice of leadership, a voice of, as everybody's inundated with media about the panic, that you're a voice of calm. Hey, business hasn't completely shut down. Hey, things are off a little bit. It's about positive. It's not falsely positive, but it's like finding, as Wendy said, finding the text message, the story that sort of balances things out. And it's also letting people know, I have a bit of a plan. Here's what we're working on. You don't have to go through all the details. It may be a presentation you fumble through. People want the authenticity of you saying, we're working on it. That's really what they want to know, that just somebody is working in their best interest to maintain their employment, to bring them back, to get product out to them, to continue to deliver and service them. But it's really an opportunity to step up. And that may be uncomfortable for a lot of business owners, but that's really your challenge right now, is to be able to do that. I use this slide because I think it's important to know that you're the voice for clients, customers, staff, and you have to be the voice who's talking about when we get through this. If there's the presumption, I've said to clients through April and May, that you're still working from home, what about June? What about July? Well, there is going to be, if it came to July, that Canadians are always famous for, the first warm day that everybody wants to hit a patio, go to a restaurant, go for a walk, get out of their house. if you don't think that reaction is going to be on steroids come the summer, there is going to be a large bounce back. But you have to get customers talking about, well, I know you don't need any product now. What are you going to need into the future? Most people see a couple of days right now or even 1 week ahead. Your job as a business owner is to be thinking months ahead and to be able to think, what does the rebound look like for my business when this comes out? Yeah, and really that could be May, it could be June. One of my clients is phoning people. They have a lot of training out of the US. They've postponed most of those trainings, and he's now booking them into October, November, and December of the fall season. So he's got them on the books, rebooked, and it's a safe timeline that he thinks he can get back to delivering. The second point I think is really important is know your numbers. Obviously, this is the number one strangle spot for most businesses. It's cash. And I think Clayton touched on some of that. One of the things that I think is critical is the ability to do a cash flow calendar. Just understanding based on my burn rate and my numbers today, how long have I got cash in the bank for? What have I got from a credit resources? This can be pretty simple. If you don't know how to do these numbers, then engage somebody, whether it's your accountant. We help clients with this sort of thing, but it's really critical. When people say, well, what's your burn rate or what's your overhead every month? I would say 50% of people don't have an accurate number. They say, well, I think it's about 65,000. Well, knowing it's 65 or knowing it's 56, that $9,000 is going to mean a lot in the coming weeks. So you have to be aware of that. I look at scenarios. One of my clients who's in construction is saying, if I'm able to get to the next milestone where I get cash in the door, I'm good for 6 months. If I don't get those milestones, I'm good for 6 weeks, and being able to play out his cash flow all the way through that. And the piece that a lot of people are missing is sales projections. For most of us, sales haven't gone to zero, but you have to adjust for, as the sales have gone down, what does that look like? This is something that is ongoing and should be a live, organic, living document that you're reviewing, if not daily, a couple times a week. Now, here's a great example of the complexity that this can have as a cash flow projector week by week. And so I put it up because it could be like this. If you're not capable of doing this, start at least working your numbers on math or on a napkin, work them on a basic spreadsheet, but you have to be able to get into that. The reason this is so important is you have to be able to think about getting to profitability now. I know so many people have said, well, I hate to lay anybody off, and I absolutely appreciate that. But if your revenue has come down 30%, you have to get your expenses down by 30%. If sales are off 50%, you have to look to reduce costs by 50%, because you have to be able to look and say, where's profitability now? And 2 weeks out, where is it now? And then where is it now again? It's really, really critical. And the reason this is so important, I know this is one of the toughest parts for business owners, is to make cuts and make decisions today that affect them and get them back to this profitability. But here's what I think is a critical thing to think about. You're not just thinking about the employees that you have to temporarily lay off. You have to be thinking about your entire ecosystem. And it's not frogs and tadpoles. In this case, your ecosystem is your team, your customers, your suppliers. You have a whole network of people that depend on your business running. And even more, most importantly, the person we leave out of our ecosystem is you and us, the business owners. So all of those people have to be protected. If it means laying off a few people temporarily right now, so that 6 weeks from now, your business can be continuing to thrive or progress, or at least be available and be there for your entire ecosystem, that's critical. You'd never want to be able to keep people employed for another 4 weeks, only to have your business fail and have that entire ecosystem that you support collapse on you. So this is the long-term view, is that whole ecosystem. Short-term is worrying too much about temporary layoffs. I want to touch on just the life cycle of a business. And this is, the traditional is you start up a business, you scale it, it reaches a bit of maturity. And oftentimes as the business ends, there's a bit of a decline. And this mirrors the innovation curve for a lot of businesses. In startup mode, they have huge innovation, and then it starts to slow down. And oftentimes the decline is because of this innovation. In a giant adaptive life cycle we have now, where it is adapting every single day, the critical piece here is that if your business has been stable and fairly mature, it has probably gone into some sort of fast decline, or if you haven't seen that, there's the risk it's going to. And so to stabilize and be able to make that recovery is going to mean a massive amount of innovation. And what I mean by that is, if you think about when you first started the business, you were willing to try anything, take any contracts. If somebody said, hey, put on a chicken suit and stand in the corner and wave your arms, you were willing to try it in order to get sales and get clients and move things forward. You have to get back to that kind of focus. I say, if you're looking at adapting, is how you can change the customer experience. The obvious one I think everybody's experienced is businesses that suddenly deliver, that suddenly give it where I can order it online off a website. That is the first place to start. The second place to start is sales. Where can you be delivering sales presentations that used to be live, where you're now doing it over Zoom or Skype or something like that? How can you be taking orders? How can you be assessing a sales situation without having to go on site at a client's? I have one of my clients who's set up a self-assessment tool. They've built it out. They can send it to a client to download as an app on an iPad, and the client can self-assess, which ironically is helping in the sales process. The next thing is adapting your marketing, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. The team experience, this is one that people forget about. Your team, if they've been shipped off and are working remotely, need to come back to feeling like a team. A good friend of mine is running a business tomorrow, or today, actually Friday at 3 o'clock. They're having a beer meeting. There's 75 people all chiming in on a Zoom. They're all working from home, but he's finding ways to creatively bring the team together and adapting their experience. And then the last thing would be efficiencies in the business and where you can adapt to cut things, change the way you deliver, adapt your costs. I say innovation in a business, and this is sort of my definition, is anything you can do, something new, different, no matter how small it is, that's going to positively affect your customers, your staff, efficiency, or your profitability. So I want to stress that for a lot of people, the success, the factor that you need to really succeed is going to be offering more. The first place a lot of business owners go is, I'll slash my price. Slashing your price is not the solution. If there isn't a need for your product, it doesn't matter what the price is. And so oftentimes people are not going to be moved just because something's on sale right now. It's because they really do have a need for it. But to that end, I've got clients who instead are offering more. They're now offering an online education component to something they've done live in the past, broadening out warranty programs, additional quality checks, audits that they can do, a buyback program to reduce some of the risk, bonus gifts with a purchase, and I'll give you some real tangible things in terms of specifics. I've got a client that launched a money-back guarantee that at any point, if you don't need the product or aren't happy, that you can send it back. Sales have continued to roll along pretty well with that money-back guarantee launch. They saw a big spike. Delivery, there's a cafe here not just down from my office. They started delivering their pastries. Deliveries are out, sort of takeout sales are up 800% right now, and they're almost on par with their regular sales. I think most of the people on this call have probably used Amazon for something and realized the power of that. I've got a client where they've laid off a bunch of warehouse people, and those warehouse people have become the new delivery people. I've got a client where this is the size of, they deliver their product in drums, and they've reached out to their packaging and manufacturing company and found that they can deliver like a little tote that's a quarter this size. As clients are using less of their product, they've adapted the sizes to keep orders rolling and make sure they're not losing orders just because people have inventory. I've got a friend who's delivering donuts with every order. Every Canadian who's ever been to a Tim Hortons knows the power of a donut. It sounds kind of hokey to be like, well, really, is that what's going to generate sales? It's working for them. The idea that, hey, I make an order today, I get free donuts, is working very effectively. And the last thing, I know somebody who is encouraged that with every order, they now have a charity giving to the brown bagging for Calgary's kids. And so that component of giving back to community with every single order is, again, driving sales for them. I think one of the things that's critical for people is the game of staying as close to a 100% of your revenue as you can. If you're off at 90%, the question is, how do I stay at 90? If it's 70%, how do I stay at that? This idea of closing your business unless it's mandated is dangerous, because even at 20% of your revenue, you've got some cash flow, you can engage a reduced number of people, you've got something to be talking about with clients. So I love the idea that survival for most of us is moving maybe from 100, but avoiding at all cost that sense of zero. So I like the idea, great way. I've got a friend who is and a client who is asking all of their staff, and part of the discussion they're having every week is, what else can we do creatively to be bringing up more business? A good example of this, actually, Direct Energy has just moved into air purification systems and are now promoting that as a new product line to offset some of the cash problem they know they're going to have with utilities. I come back to this idea of crossing things in sales, getting people to the point and saying, well, I know you don't need the service, or I've got a client who's got paramedical clinics. They can't be delivering chiro, massage, those types of services. but they know in 6 weeks' time, people are going to need that, and they're booking into the future. They're asking people to book into the future. When do you want us to call you back? And those, I think, are critical things. One of the things I think, and there goes an ambulance. One of the things I think is really incredible is people all know how to go to a Starbucks. Let me ask you, who doesn't know how to go to a Starbucks and order a coffee? Even the coffee experience of going to Starbucks has changed, where people are like, well, can I sit down? Can I still go in? Do I wait for the coffee? Do I have to, keep a distance? How does that work? You have to educate people on how your business is now operating. Are you delivering? Is it curbside delivery? And they can pick it up. Is it something that you're having a courier? Is it electronic? Tell me how I can still buy product from your business. Is it a gift card now too, if you're a restaurant where you can no longer offer services, but I can buy gift cards to support you? Tell me how to buy. That's a critical thing that so many businesses have stopped doing. The last couple things here are ramping up your marketing. This is the first place so often I've had clients saying I should just cut all of that. You can't cut it because it is going to have a ripple effect longer term on your business, well beyond COVID-19 recovering. And people are still looking for things. In fact, the number one thing from a search perspective on Google has been the idea that mobile delivery and all of the ways that people are adapting their business is now what people are searching for. A friend and I were just talking about how do you get somebody to pick up all the wine and liquor bottles from your house when you used to take them to the depot? And he said, oh, well, there's an app for that. Anyway, that's one of those things in searching and being able to find it. When I say more marketing, I'm talking about AdWords to be able to match what people are already searching for. I'm talking about making sure your website, search engine optimization, remarketing campaigns are in place that people can find you again, and when they land there, they get what you do. Database marketing. You have so many businesses I know have hundreds and hundreds of emails and people and phone numbers, and that is the number one free way to be able to reach people. Most of us have referral programs, but now's the time to make that an active program. And if I had more time, I'd really drill down on that. Google reviews costs nothing, but it naturally makes you more findable. And when people search for services, if you've got great Google reviews, it is going to drive business. Lots of us have alliance partners, cross-promoting with their database and their client base. I know a couple of people who have had access to a promotion where somebody else promotes it across 2,000 of their clients, and it instantly drives some sales. LinkedIn, you have never had more time to find people who could buy your product on LinkedIn. And then if you start to really pay for things, advertorials, an advertisement where you write all the copy and they do a profile on your business. Posting on social, it's all the way down at, I think, number 9 on my list, because for most of us, posting on social doesn't drive business immediately, but it's good for presence. And then finally, advertising. If you have to spend a lot more money, get to that. But as you can see here with a short list, there's so many things you can be working on now, a content library for the next 3 months that are going to drive your business and give you visibility. I leave this vanilla ice cream. So many of us in marketing and business owners forget that having some life, some vitality, telling a real story, authenticity, making it interesting is the way you got to go. It can't be like the guy at the dinner party who says, hi, I'm Gary, I'm in insurance, and you walk away. It has to be punchy, interesting. Show people you're striving in your business, and people will respond to that message. And the last couple of things is being strategic. Think about it this way. My favorite phrase is, I am proactively being strategic instead of reactively being tactical. Think about your strategic around revenues, around the expenses, when you cut your marketing, your selling process, and making sure your team knows what the selling process is too. Reaching out to say, who can I joint venture with, and where are there alliances that we can start to promote and drive business together? The communication strategy you have. If your communication isn't on steroids, where you're reaching out to people all the time consistently and having your staff do it, you're missing an opportunity. Something I'd love to dive into for a full hour is the idea of appreciation, appreciating your clients and thanking them for the work. What better time right now than clients that are still with you and suppliers to be able to say thank you, and even to thank you to your team. I think it goes a really long way to keep your ecosystem intact. Now's the time to be learning. If you're not on webinars and seminars and reading books and Audible all the time, gaining knowledge on stuff, tracking what's going on with the government programs, you're missing out. There's lots of tools out there that you can be researching. A great time now to be able to say what systems are working and which ones are clearly broken. And then schedule. With everybody working from home and as a leader, the way you work probably has dramatically changed and will be changed for the next little while. So how do you start to maximize that again? So those are all the things that people sort of sometimes think, oh, I'm just going to go home and Netflix and binge on TV and I can work from home and relax. I want you to call out to people that now's the time I need you to double down and step up. And that's true with business owners. And I will say, end on this note, that the most important thing is the people that believe their business will get through this and take that committed look at it are the ones that really are going to thrive and survive. That's it, Mike.
Very good. Thank you so much, Marty. Yeah, I think, you know, I've gotten 2 emails from people that I've worked with in the last few days, just saying, hey, like, do you mind taking some time to fill out a Google review? And of course I don't mind. I think now is a really good time to ask for help, to ask your clients for help, to ask your associates, to ask your business, like, how can we help each other? Because this is one of those times that we're literally all in the same situation. So you don't have to be embarrassed about asking for help. It's not a reflection of what kind of business owner you are, or what kind of boss you are. It's a tidal wave that sort of knocked us all out. So I think that was really good. There's just a few questions here that maybe you could help people wrap their heads around. As a medical clinic with thousands of patients, how do you effectively reach out to them and show that we care and want to connect with them?
Well, I think there's a couple ways. The first one, when people talk about those numbers, I've been dealing with a medical clinic that is a similar thing, but they have a bunch of practitioners that are unavailable, that aren't working. So they, instead of having one person like traditionally the receptionist try and reach 1,000 people, they have a dozen people that they could divide up that list and go through it. I still think that phone is the number one way. If you can't do that, if you're going to send an email to all your people, make it a personal email, right? Sign it, Mike. Be able to say, hey, and tell a story and add in photos. And, you know, the last thing you want to do is make it look like some sort of a corporate announcement. I want to feel connection and know that there's people at your business. Tell me the story about how you guys are struggling or what you're doing. I'd rather learn about your story and struggle than I would just get something that looks like a form email. But I think the personal connection is key.
Yeah, and they also don't need, a business doesn't need to communicate to their people right now. We're in a long-term situation. This is going to be a few weeks, maybe a few months. You know, you don't. I don't think you have to rush your message right now either. You can wait till you actually have something you want to say, because as you said at the beginning of the presentation, you don't want to become just another email that people delete when you really just want to thank your customers and clients. Right. Another question here: if sales have dropped to 0, how do we consider profitability now? Suggestions: mandated shutdown, so no money coming in.
Yeah, if you're at a point where you've been mandated and so revenue really is 0, and so I look at and say, is there anything else outside of your regular services that you could sell? Is there anything you could book into the future? But if there isn't some way to be able to capture different revenue, then the immediate thing you have to be able to do is look and say, I've got to start cutting expenses to reduce that cost every month and be able to, and so with that, I mean, and I think Clay's a good person to be able to work through that cash flow with, but I'm looking at government programs with people. I'm looking at lending with BDC. I've got clients who have, even as a backup plan, gone to talk to their bank about home line of credit. But the big thing is, if your overhead every month was $50,000 or $100,000, you have to see what you can eliminate and put a pause on and defer and reduce as fast as you possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, just you sort of have to be a bit brutal, you know, on the luxuries maybe your business had. Maybe you had a really nice office, or maybe you had a coffee service, or, you know, right now it's about keeping your head above water. I'm really inspired by Neil Zeller, who's an Aiken Henderson client, but he's a photographer in the city, and he's really captured that portraits, which you may have seen on the news going around, and taking photos of people on their porches. And it's a bit of a fee, so he's like, pay if you want, pay if you can, but you don't have to, kind of thing. And so I'm sure that he's making enough in the last 2 weeks, you know, to pick up a few clients that he lost. And so being able to pivot really quickly, and so that's not something he would normally do, but he thought of the idea and went with it. So it's about sort of evolving what you normally do, what you're comfortable with, and who knows, you might find yourself on a newer path of something that you'll find more interesting.
I think out of the downturn of 2008, 2009, there was lots of people that on a whim started doing something out of their house, and from that became a new business.
Yeah, exactly. All right, everyone. Well, we're a bit over time, but thank you. This was very, very interesting. It looks like all the questions, Clay has been answering them and things like that. Marty, if people want to get a hold of you, what's your contact?
The easiest way the easiest way to reach me is just Marty, M-A-R-T-Y, at martypark.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, Clay, do you want to have a final message?
Sure. I guess a couple of interesting updates that have happened while we've been on this webinar. The Minister Morneau has come out and said the 75% wage subsidy details will be available Monday. And the GST payment deferral, remember there's no filing deferral yet, but the payment deferral is being pushed to June 30th. So reach out if you have any questions. I'm answering emails frantically, you know, and happy to work through any issues with your business as well as the other presenters. I'm sure they'd love to hear from you as well. So we're all in this together, and we're here to help. So.
Yeah, and I also noticed too that the city of Calgary has just announced that they're closing a lot of the streets along the rivers and the pathways to cars this weekend, and so it's so beautiful out. And I think so many of us, we might as well just sort of wait till Monday with these announcements. As hard as it's going to be, we're in this for a long haul. So maybe just get outside, get some fresh air, keep practicing social distance, and give your brains a rest, I think.
Hell yeah.
Excellent. Okay, Marty, Ronnie, Wendy, Clayton, thank you so much. This was really great.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Aiken Henderson, for hosting this. Have a great day, everyone.
Anytime. Thanks. Bye for now.